Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you watch my previous videos, you know that I have been traveling to Saudi Arabia solo for 10 days in November 2022. So in this video, I just wanted to share my experience, give you some tips, advices on how to navigate this still mysterious country from a touristic perspective based on my experience. So in this video, we are gonna discuss my itinerary, the general entry requirements for the country, the costs, the transportation to navigate the country, food, safety, and also I will provide you with some general recommendations if you're thinking to head to this fascinating country. So my itinerary, I flew from London where I live to Riyadh with Pegasus Airlines with a stopover in Istanbul. I spent 3 nights in Riyadh and I catch a flight to Jeddah. Actually, I didn't stay in Jeddah because I catch a train to Medinah, stayed 2 days there, and then I catch a bus to go to Alula in the north of the country. I spent 3 nights there and then I flew from Alula to Jeddah, my last destination, where I spent there 2 days. And then from Jeddah, I flew back to London with a stopover in Doha with Qatar Airways. For each of these destinations, I made a video, so if you're interested, please check them out on my channel. Saudi Arabia has been completely closed to tourism until September 2019, when the Prince Mohammed bin Salman finally decided to start issuing e-visa to international visitors, trying to diversify the economy, which is currently and obviously still heavily reliant on oil. Now, if you're a tourist from one of the 49 eligible countries, you can apply for a tourist visa online from the quick and easy to use e-visa platform before traveling, or upon arrival in Saudi from the visa offices of the immigration department. To be fair, the cost is quite steep at 535 Saudi Riyal, but if you also includes health insurance for the whole stay in Saudi Arabia, it's a multiple visa entry which is valid for 1 year from the date of issuance, and you can stay in the country up to 90 days. I applied online and the process was very smooth. I just got my e-visa approved within a matter of minutes. Guys, in case you have a drone, you are gonna face some trouble in trying to import it within the country. I do have a drone and I was trying to figure out a way to bring it within Saudi Arabia, but actually it was impossible. GACA, so the General Authority of Civil Aviation, is responsible for your applications. So there is this online portal where you can upload all the supporting documentation, such as the serial number of the drone, the model, your ID number. However, at a certain point, apparently foreigners cannot proceed any further because they will ask you to provide a Saudi ID number, which I don't have, of course. So for that reason, I tried to contact them several times by phone or by email, but actually I never got any feedback or any satisfactory answer, so I had to drop my application. I know what you're thinking right now. What about if I sneak it within a bag, maybe it will go unnoticed at the border controls? Well, don't do that, because as far as I could see in both Riyadh and Jeddah, when you land, there are tough security controls, so they will search your bag once again, so they will find your drone and they will confiscate it, so game over. So the only suggestion I have here for you is just to try to find a Saudi national who may help you in submitting the application on your behalf. Shall we talk about costs? So the currency in Saudi Arabia is the Saudi Riyal, which is divided in 100 halabas. So the exchange rate as of today is this one below. There are a lot of ATMs scattered across the country, so I never had any issue in withdrawing money. And you can pay by either debit card or credit card pretty much everywhere. When I landed in Riyadh, I bought a SIM card and I spent £25 for 10 giga. So there are two main operators, STC, which has a much better coverage but is more expensive, and Mobileye, the one I bought, which is a bit cheaper but actually has much less coverage outside the big cities. I made this spreadsheet which basically summarizes all the costs I incurred in 10 days stay in the country, broken down by different categories. Let's have a look. All the costs are expressed in British pounds. So I spent £566 flying from London to Riyadh return, with a stopover in Istanbul and then in Doha. I flew from Riyadh to Jeddah, spending £48 with a budget airline, and then finally from Alula to Jeddah, spending £158 with Saudia. Actually, this price was quite expensive because I booked it just 2 days in advance. Budget accommodation options are extremely extremely limited in Saudi Arabia. So backpacking is still a very new concept. So don't expect hostels or cheap guest houses on your trip. On the bright side, it's now legal for men and women and married couples to share rooms. Single women are also allowed to have their own room in Saudi Arabia. For my 3 nights in Riyadh, I stayed in a 3-star hotel. I spent roughly £67 a night. The hotel was located in the district of Alula, very close to the Kingdom Tower, so one of the best neighborhood of Riyadh. To be honest, I could have spent much less, but actually I wanted to be central. And the hotel was, the room was very spacious, the hotel was very clean, and it also came with a breakfast included. Medina was the cheapest accommodation. I only spent roughly £40 for a 3-star hotel located just outside the Al-Haram area where the Prophet Mosque is located, just 10-15 minutes walk from the mosque. The hotel was undergoing some kind of renovation, so it was like a bit messy, but on the other hand the room was very spacious, was clean, and the service was very good. Accommodation in Alula, guys, probably the most incredible site within Saudi Arabia, at least from my perspective, but for sure the most expensive one. So as you can see here from this screenshot, actually the cheapest accommodation I could find was roughly £120. So the prices were like outrageously expensive because the offer is very limited. And my last night in Alula, I slept in a tent in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, and I spent £70. Cost of transportation, good news here, it's quite cheap to go around with taxis and Uber and Caim, another popular app in Saudi Arabia. Just to give you an idea, an half-an-hour ride with Uber or Caim cost about £8 to £10. As you can see here, I spent much less in Alula because the city is much smaller, of course, compared to Riyadh, Jeddah or Medina. So I was mainly walking through the different sides of the city. In terms of food, I was traveling alone, so I didn't spend so much time in restaurants. During the daytime, I was normally eating some street food, and then I was used to head to some nicer restaurant in the evening. So once again, Alula is where prices were considerably higher than other places, but I strongly recommend the restaurants of the old town as the food is delicious and the portions are massive. I want to mention the side entrance. So I spent £15 to go on top of the sky bridge within the Kingdom Tower in Riyadh to admire a stunning view of the city, and then £80 to head to the edge of the world for a half-day tour on the outskirts of Riyadh, and definitely the highlight of this trip. So all in all, I spent a little more than £2,000 for a 10 days holiday. Probably I could have spent much less, especially in Alula, but the offer there in terms of accommodation was very limited, so I had no choice. But if you're heading to Saudi Arabia, if you're heading to Alula, bear in mind that you should start planning well in advance where to sleep, because otherwise you will end up paying a lot of money. How to travel within this huge country? So due to its size, of course, the main mode of transportation is by plane. There are 3 international airports in Riyadh, Jeddah and Dammam, and this one being the largest airport in the world by area. Personally, I flew from Riyadh to Jeddah, which is the most common route. Very cheap flights with Flynas, the budget airlines of Saudi Arabia. And then I flew from Alula to Jeddah once again using Saudia. The second way of transportation is by train. As a nation driven by oil, Saudi Arabia transportation infrastructure doesn't depend heavily on rails. Saudi Arabia has less than 3,000 kilometers of railway tracks, less than a small country like Serbia. Having said that, there is a high-speed railway line, the Haramain, which was completed in 2017, which connects the 2 Islamic holy cities of Mecca and Medina through Jeddah. I catch this train to travel from Jeddah to Medina, and the journey was absolutely efficient and pleasant. The other way you can travel through this immense country is by bus. The Saudi public transport company known as SATCO, established in 1979, operates a fleet of more than 4,500 vehicles with multiple routes through the kingdom. It transports approximately 8 million people monthly between the major cities of the kingdom. And in addition to the national routes, the company also operates more than 10 international routes. So if you want, you can also travel from Saudi Arabia to any other Gulf country, and actually more than 500,000 people use these international services on a monthly basis. I use the Subco services to travel from Medina to Alula, and the journey took around 6 hours. Within cities, no matter whether they are big or small, you can use both Uber and Careem, which is an app very similar to Uber. It's worth mentioning the fact that in a huge city like Riyadh, nearly 8 million of people, 95% of all the journeys are done by private car and only 5% by public transportation. That's completely crazy, and that's because there is no metro system in Riyadh. So there is one under construction with 6 lines and if I'm not wrong, 85 stations due to open in late 2023, but at the moment it's very difficult to navigate the city, which is very big, is spread over several square miles. Same issue for Jeddah, a huge city of nearly 6 million of inhabitants. No metro whatsoever. In this case, there is a new metro due to be open in 2025, but at the moment the only option you have Uber and Careem. Food was an amazing surprise for me, and I love it. As part of the Islamic and Bedouin culture, it's a huge honor for them to host and feed a traveler or anyone who shows up at their doorstep, and this is especially true in Saudi Arabia. Since it borders with so many Arabic countries, its huge dimensions with many different geographical areas and its multi-ethnic population, the food in Saudi Arabia is a real blend of all the Arabic food you can think of. Saudi Arabia is 95% desert, so many traditional dishes reflect the ancient trade caravans and nomadic lifestyles of the desert dwellers. A typical Saudi breakfast is quite simple. It may be dates with kahwa, which is a light coffee with cardamom pods and flavored with saffron, or just bread and cheese. Lunch is traditionally the main meal of the day, and it's almost always include a rice dish like kabsa, considered the national dish of Saudi Arabia, which is quite spiced. Rice is topped with either roast chicken, beef, or even fish, and also there is some tomato and chili sauce added to the dish, along with some chopped salad. Dinner is the lighter meal, and it can be anything from a soup to a sandwich. Of course, alcohol is prohibited everywhere, but actually you can enjoy amazing fruit juice or fruit shakes. By the way, traditionally Saudis eat on the floor with their right hand, and almost every single restaurant I tried in Saudi Arabia had an area with normal tables and also an area with these like carpets where you could eat on the floor. You just take off your shoes and you sit down. Is it safe to travel to Saudi Arabia? Well, from a crime perspective, Saudi Arabia is another very safe place to visit within the Middle East. As per the terrorism threat, I will not deny that there have been some one-off episodes of terrorism, mainly close to the Yemeni border, because there is an ongoing war with Yemen. However, on this side of the border, the situation is completely safe. In my opinion, the real threat while traveling to Saudi Arabia is that most of the drivers are completely crazy. So if you watch until this point, thank you very much, guys. I know it's a quite long video, but I wanted to be as comprehensive as possible. So finally, I just wanted to give you some general miscellaneous tips on how to travel to Saudi Arabia. All in all, traveling to Saudi Arabia is a quite new concept since the country opened just in 2019. So very often I was asked whether I was heading to the World Cup in Qatar. And when I said, well, no, I'm just here in Saudi to visit Saudi solo for 10 days, everybody was very surprised. Saudi Arabia is a very religious country, as you may know, of course, and to be honest, it's the most religious country I ever traveled to. Most Saudis follow a branch of Islam named Wahhabism, which is characterized for having the most conservative interpretation of Islam, and the law of Saudi Arabia strictly follows it. Be aware that non-Muslims are not allowed to enter Mecca at any times. Medina is a bit of a grey area, so non-Muslims can enter the White City, but they cannot enter the city center, the Al-Haram, where the Prophet Mosque is located. And when I went to Medina, I was wandering around the Prophet Mosque, taking some pictures and just enjoying the amazing atmosphere. And I was stopped by the religious police. They interrogated me for nearly half an hour. It was a quite scary experience, and then they let me go. If you're interested in understanding a bit more about this experience, I upload a separate video on my channel, so check it out. In terms of dress code, women need to wear an abaya. However, they are not obliged to cover their heads anymore. Men, they can wear shorts. However, all the local men wear the wife long tobe. Another rule is that some places are segregated by sex. You will figure out by yourself that some restaurants or cafes are still composed of two areas, men and family section. So women or men that go with women need to sit in the family sections. This kind of segregation is slowly disappearing anyway in both Riyadh and Jeddah. Another interesting fact is that Muslims pray 5 times a day, and every time all the shops and restaurants shut completely for 15-20 minutes. It happened twice to me that I was inside a shop and I was asked to leave and come back after 20 minutes. In terms of alcohol, of course, this is completely forbidden, even in 5-star hotels. And lastly, I wanted to mention the incredible hospitality of Saudi people. Seriously, from the moment the immigration officer stamped my passport with a huge smile on his face, trying to improve his Italian, to all the occasions where locals were trying to show me around or were trying to help me in getting from point A to point B, I always had very pleasant, amazing, I would say, experiences with the locals. So if you're concerned about traveling to Saudi Arabia because you heard that the locals are arrogant, are racist, whatever, well, that's not true. At least according to my experience, I always found amazing locals. Seriously, go here, Saudi Arabia, guys. Well, that's all for today. And I could speak about this country for hours, but I respect your time. So as always, if you have any comments, questions, just let me know in the comment box below. Thank you very much for watching. Shukran, and see you each other in the next video, inshallah.